Question has come up with a lot of people about giving to the foundation in order to get money back into the district. And they say, well, why don't I just give money to the district and bypass, because half of it's, I only get half of it back. I get much more in the district designated funds if I contributed directly to the district designated funds. Well, my answer to that, and I'd ask you all to answer the same way if that question ever comes up, is that, you know, the Rotary Foundation is an international foundation. There's lots of international foundations for people to give their money to. They all have good projects and objectives. Rotary International is the only one I know of that actually sends money back to you to use in other areas. So it's really, the money coming back to the district is really a side benefit. It's a plus for another reason to give to the annual fund or to the disaster relief fund. So you should give to the international fund because we're a national organization and we're doing good internationally. Some of that does come back to the district to help us out, but that's not the reason to give. So don't use that as a reason to give. Give to the Rotary Foundation because we are an international organization and we do good around the world, and that's how we do it. But we also get some of that money back that we can work in the district. So does anybody have any questions for me on that, or does that make sense?
It does make sense, yes.
What I used to say when they would give me that question is I would say it all comes back, because
yeah,
we get money from the World Fund on the projects that we're doing in other areas. So we get 50% back for district, but we get 100% back when you consider all the projects we're doing in Guatemala and all the other areas. So
yeah.
So thank you again. Another great session. And as we continue on, then this is our last section of time. Then and Jeff has a great presentation on engaging members. And so, Mr. Jeff, please and thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kathy. It's been a long day, folks. Hopefully you're comfy. We've got a few more sessions to go. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so there's a lot to cover in engaging members, and we're just going to scratch the surface on this because there's so many considerations. The sentence under the title, again, that nice kind of way to kind of catch this. I make my club and Rotary stronger by my active participation. So what word in that sentence do you think best reflects the notion of engaging members? What's the key word here? Nancy?
I would say active.
I would agree. Some of you may have heard the, Rotary in name only, the rhino notion. We want people to be active. And just like we talked about before, you can be a member and you can pay your dues, but if you're not an active member, then we're not optimizing your membership. You're not providing as much of the value and the skills and all of that we talked about. And that's what engaging members is all about. The focus of this session is to explore the value and options of engaging members. So again, a lot of considerations here. I'm gonna, before I stop sharing, one thing I want to point out, kind of like with some of the previous sessions where the information in the RLI materials may be outdated. You'll notice here there's a member satisfaction survey, a sample. We're going to talk in a few minutes about the difference between satisfaction and engagement. They're not the same. And if it were me, if I were Mr. Rotary, it would be a member engagement survey, not a member satisfaction survey. We'll talk about that in a minute. So I just want to bring your attention to that. And so I'm going to stop sharing. And we're going to have a little bit of an open discussion before we get into the nuts and bolts. So let's start with this premise that satisfaction and engagement are not the same thing. The title of this section is not satisfying members. It's engaging members. So what do you think the differences are between engaging and satisfying? Anyone? Think about
Energy.
energy. Say more about that. What do you mean?
If I'm satisfied, I may well be sitting back, being complacent, moving along as life as usual. If I'm engaged, I'm thinking and planning and proposing and acting.
So it goes back to that word active.
And all of that is energizing.
Yep. Very good. Did someone have their hand raised?
Yeah,
Go ahead, Steve.
I was just going to say very much what the governor just said, but that satisfaction is a state of mind and engagement is a state of action, or is all about activity.
Oh, nice. Yes.
Let me ask you this. This past year with the pandemic, have most of you had your Rotary meetings online? Okay.
Yeah.
If you're presiding over an online meeting, like let's say this, what would be indications that we're an engaged group of people?
Speaking up.
Comments.
Speaking up, right? So a number of you have been fairly quiet today. That does not mean that you're not invested, that you're not listening. But if my job, let's say as a trainer, or if I'm presiding over a meeting, is to ensure that people are engaged, I want that response. I want that demonstration of being active. It's harder in an online environment. If we're in a room together, there's other things I can see, like body language. There's other signals. Online, it's a little harder, especially when we're sharing screens. So one reason I'm not sharing my screen right now is when I'm sharing my screen, I'm only seeing 5 of you. And the rest of you, I'm not seeing. So just for the purposes of this module, even though my intent was to share my screen, I'm not going to. Because I want to kind of reinforce that in this kind of online world that we are in, the notion of engagement looks a little bit different. And Kathy might have mentioned it earlier, or Arturo did when he took the picture. Anytime someone shuts off their video or their microphone, I'm a little concerned. Now, there could be a valid reason like, well, Jeff, I'm eating my lunch. I'm like, okay. But when I lose the view, I'm not sure if that person is engaged, right? So it's something that it's always important to think about engagement. In an online environment, you just think about it a little bit different. There's different things to consider. What you all said before is exactly right. Satisfaction is great. It's like the minimum. What we want is engaged people, especially because they're volunteers. Laura, you've got your hand raised. Go ahead.
I was going to say chat is also another really good way to look at engagement, because there are many reasons people shut off their cameras. One is it does impact bandwidth for folks that have issues with that. The other, interestingly enough, is that psychologically having somebody's face be really close to the camera, or just looking at somebody close to their face, is actually a psychological trigger of aggression. And so they recommend not leaving your cameras on too much. But you're right, it's hard to see if people are engaged if you're not seeing them.
But your point is valid. If someone is not speaking up, but they're putting notes in the chat, that to me is similar level of engagement, involved in the discussion, points of view. So yeah, satisfaction is great. But it became clear years ago that satisfaction was not sufficient. What we really wanted was engagement, activity. The key statistic, and Bruce and I have trained this for years, and it's still to me astounding. And it may have changed a little bit, but not significantly. When I heard this, I want to say maybe 6-7 years ago at an international convention, 50% of people that leave Rotary, so half the people that leave Rotary, leave within the first 3 years that they were a member.
Jeff, I have heard 50% of those who join Rotary leave within the first 3 years.
N-
Hmm.
No, it's
No?
50%, it's 50% who leave,
Okay,
left within the first 3 years. It's not
Okay.
50% who joined, because there's a lot, but for all the people that left,
okay.
for that population, 50% left within the first 3 years of them joining. That's not a continuum. If it was more spread out, then you wouldn't have something like 50% in 3 years, right? It would be less than that. The notion that that many people leave in the first 3 years suggests that they were not engaged. They were not active. As leaders in Rotary, which we all are, because that was what Bruce mentioned at the start, we were all leaders in Rotary. The fact that they were not engaged isn't their problem, it's our problem. It's the club's problem. It wasn't their problem. If I'm serving in a leadership role, so if I'm watching all of you and half of you are not engaged, I better do something. It's not you. I need to find ways. No one knew their name. Yeah. I have to find ways to draw from you. So what we're going to talk about are basically strategies to engage members. So show of hands, you don't have to use the hand button, just how many of you in your clubs have been or are involved in, let's say, your membership committee? Okay, good, many of you. So when we think about membership, we typically think about recruitment and we think about retention, right? And we typically think about them as two somewhat independent strategies, typically. How are we going to recruit? Who's our target market? What's our pitch? And then we flip to the other branch. How do we keep who we've got? In reality, they really shouldn't be two separate branches. They should be integrated. Some of those people in that 50% who left in the first 3 years, maybe they weren't a good fit to start because the club who recruited that person, they didn't engage in a discussion about, well, what are your expectations for being a member of this club? How can we best fit your interests, right? So if you were to fix a problem of people leaving, you need to start with why they joined and under what circumstances. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So even though there's another module about recruitment, strategically, you really can't separate them. The work may be different, but you're thinking about it as you know, holistically. We're looking for people who are going to be a good fit with us and who are going to be active. Otherwise, we're going to get that 50% leaving in the first 3 years. It bothers me a little bit. So as district trainer, you know, we had our president-elect training, which was great. And incoming presidents would talk about their membership goals. I mean, that's like the #1 goal, and it should be. the part that concerns me a little bit is if they just focus on the number and not the people. Because if they just focus on the number, like we're just going to try to get 10 more people, they're going to lose 50% of them in 3 years. Ultimately, it's good fit, active, engaged, fits the culture of the club, you know, all those kind of considerations. And if that happens on the recruitment side, there's a better chance that they're going to stay engaged and active as a member. So does that ring true? Do you have any, maybe without naming names, obviously, do you have any personal experience, maybe for some of you on a membership committee, what your experience is in terms of how the recruitment went and whether they stayed and got engaged, things like that?
Aaron.
Karen, go ahead.
A very dear friend brought me into Rotary because he was, and I'm quoting, this is actually Steve said, a buddy system. I just saw it. I agree with him. If you have a buddy that brought you in and is interested in assisting and helping and showing you the ropes, I found a couple fun activities. I supported the backpack program. I didn't do it loudly. I just gave money when they needed it. I did things. I felt like I was involved because I found things. And Ken, who by the way has something like 50 years of perfect attendance in Rotary, which is amazing, Ken Abbott, I felt like I was a part. Not everybody talked to me at first. It took probably 3 years. I feel now that I know who's never going to talk to me and I know who's going to talk to me, and I get to move around to different tables, and I joined the global grant. I was asked to. I'm really comfortable with this, but I do believe that a lot of people join for the wrong reasons, and you're absolutely right. I know somebody who quit because he only wanted to get people for his business. When it didn't happen, he was out the door. We have to pick the right people, but more importantly, once they're in the door, we have a job to do. We can't just say, oh, goody, they're here, and forget about them, because that's a mistake.
And I'm going to do a poll in a second here. That's very insightful. Thank you. Engagement changes, like people's interests change over time. And something that would have engaged me 5 or 6 years ago may not engage me now. So it continues to evolve. And part of that is continually understanding the interests of the membership. Continually. Not just one time, here's our club dynamic, it's continual. So I'm gonna send out a poll. There's 2 questions. Arturo did a little bit of this, but we're going to do it for different reasons. So 2 questions for you to answer. Here we go.
Hey, Jeff.
Yeah.
You know, I kind of equate keeping members to taking care of your vehicle. If you want to go somewhere, you have to either put gas or plug in the electric cord or put diesel in it. It's a continual thing you have to do to maintain it.
Yeah.
Good
Good point. Okay, I'm at about 10 more seconds and we'll close the poll. That's a great analogy. Okay. Andy, go ahead, Andy. Go ask your question, and then we'll go over the results.
It was just a comment. I was just going to suggest that, you know, one of the things that's always occurred to me is the continual need to reassess what somebody would like to get out of the club. We all know that we all put in, and most of us are around for community service purposes or that's important to most people. But to understand what they would like to get out of it and to be sure that we're delivering that would seem to impact engagement and retention.
Right. Agreed. So for me, and I do surveys for a living, in any member survey or in like, let's say an employee survey, these two questions to me are absolutely fundamental. And what I'm looking for are differences. So if you look at this, more of you joined for networking than are in Rotary today. Right? You'll see that? There's some additional fellowship today than when you joined. There's some additional community service. So your interests changed as you were more involved in Rotary. Okay.
Can you scroll down so I could see the answers to the second question, please?
You can scroll it yourself.
You can do that
Yeah,
yourself.
Just stretch the window down.
You have to expand your window.
It's not doing, oh, there it goes.
Scroll it up and down.
And the reason I wanted to have both of them on the screen so you can see them is to look for the differences. If there were no differences, if people didn't evolve, then all I need to know is what you're interested in when you join, and that would be it. But people's interests do change, right? So if I'm the membership chair of a club, of a Rotary club, question number one is going to help me how? What's the value of question one?
Helps you bring in new members potentially.
Right. Does that
Yeah.
make sense? That's really not a retention question. It's really more of a recruitment question, right? If more people join for a particular reason, and that's what interests them, then we want to let them know that that's an opportunity for them. It's not the only one, but if more people join for a particular reason, that helps me in my recruitment strategy, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it
Okay.
does.
But if I don't ask the second question, I'm going to assume that it's still the same, and it's not. So again, if I'm chair of a membership committee, the second question is going to be more helpful in retention. And my job is to make sure that members' expectations are not just met, but are exceeded. It bothers me when someone says, well, yeah, you met my expectations. So I want to exceed expectations. That's like satisfaction versus engagement. Yeah, go ahead.
Jeff, I think a parallel question could be if we can reach out to members who have left, why they left.
Yes, that's so valuable. How many of you, well, again, a lot of you are on membership committees. How many of you get involved in kind of post surveys, like when members leave, can you help us understand what? That's really helpful. Now, it's unfortunate of the circumstances that you're asking as they're leaving, but it's still useful information, right? And I don't know what responses you got from those of you who raised your hands, but if their answer was, I'm moving, it's like, okay, congratulations, or job change. But if their answer is, this Rotary experience did not meet my expectations, that hits me in the gut. That's on us. And that's what we're trying to eliminate. We don't want that. There is so much that Rotary offers. It's virtually impossible for someone to join and not find a connection. Right? So Willis is our incoming membership chair. And Willis, please jump in here, given your role with the district. This is, to me, just absolutely fundamental. Everyone is different. Diversity is a strength. But what diversity means is also diversity in interest. We're not all the same. We've got, what, 25 people or 24? We're not the same. Now, we know that we all believe in having that ethical core. We all believe in service, but we have unique interests, and a vibrant Rotary Club goes out of its way to make sure that the interests of the members are at least being met.
I was just
Yep.
putting in a comment that, you know, I think probably a lot of places do a good orientation, but a exit interview, if you will, probably isn't in a lot of folks' design, and maybe it should be.
Very helpful.
Good, yeah.
Does anybody have one, like a formal exit interview process to see what the members are missing?
Yeah.
I think
We
the
just-
Alamogordo Club, sorry.
Oh.
Yeah.
The Alamogordo Club has a questionnaire. I don't know how consistently though we ask folks to complete it because it is important.
So along those lines, one of the things we wanted to talk about, and this is a pretty significant part of this module. The module has that member satisfaction survey, and as I mentioned, and I'm an officer of RLI, and I don't like that language. You know, it's like RLI, you know, I can say, hey, you know, we really need to change this, and they accept our input, but I think if the title of the module is engaging members, the survey should be member engagement survey, because it's different. It's oh, Carolyn, you've got your hand up. I'm sorry if I missed that.
Oh, you know, I was just going to say that when people left or didn't come in, didn't come to lunch, that we had a couple of people that just called people first to check on them to make sure they're okay, and if they were leaving, to ask why.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, in this online environment, it became even more important because there were a number of people who just said, I'm not a Zoom person, sorry. Well, if they're not a Zoom person, how do we keep them engaged, right? So again, I think this particular time, engagement strategies had to adjust because there were legitimately people that we weren't going to see for a while. And if you keep up with them, it's like, and remember, attendance is no longer tracked like it used to be, or it's a requirement, you've got to attend so many. So it's like, well, okay, we still want to make sure you're active. Maybe, and I know in some cases, they may not be attending meetings, but they're participating in service projects. That's great. We still want them to be doing something, right? Bruce, were you gonna say something?
You talk about the exit survey. I'm gonna guess, because I think I heard this at one point in time, that the exit survey comes from RI directly to the person that left the. They don't go through the clubs because they know they won't get the response back, or enough of them. So I think RI sends out the survey directly to the people that leave.
The clubs can still do that.
I see a challenge to the exit. What's going to trigger it? Some people just sort of drift away. How do you know they're no longer part of the club or involved?
Well, they're not paying dues.
Yeah.
Right.
Not dues.
And as soon as that
Potential
happens,
trigger.
RI's on top of
Right. So one thing we wanted to spend a few minutes on is the notion of that continual, if you want to call it, engagement assessment of the membership. The survey that's in your module, again, this is Jeff, it is way too long. One way to disengage people is to give them a long survey to fill out. So with that in mind, you know, if you need to develop a survey for your club, I would say you can take snippets from something like that, but it's just way too long. So gauge the membership, get their feedback. What's working well in the club? What's not working well? What can we do better for you? When I was president, we did a survey, and because I had done surveys for so many years, I had a pretty good sense of how I wanted to couch it. And I looked at key demographics. So it was anonymous because I wanted them to have confidence they can be open and honest in their results. If there was something that they didn't like, I didn't want them to feel like that would come back to them, right? So it had to be anonymous. But I did ask certain demographics questions. I asked about gender, age, when did you join Rotary? No, how long have you been in Rotary? So it was gender, age, how long have you been in Rotary? For me, those were the three demographics I was really interested in. There could have been others, but those were the three. Knowing the dynamics of the club, that's what interested me to look at results. Age, at that time, and Bruce is in my club and Doreen was at the time too, we didn't have too many younger members, but we did get a few. And I wanted to see if their expectations and their interests were different from the people who were older. I had a sense, but I wanted to see if the data validated that sense. Gender was also interesting. And again, I didn't know until I saw the results if there was going to be a difference, but I wanted to see if the female members of the club had different interests and different expectations than the men in the club. And the number of years in Rotary, I really wanted to focus on. Part of it was that idea that 50% leave in 3 years, but also part of it is if they're fairly new to Rotary, what is prime in their minds about their Rotary experience? Because the longer they're in Rotary, if they're going to stay, they're going to learn more and more and more, right? So I wanted to see if there was a difference between people that have been in Rotary for a couple of years versus people that have been in Rotary for 10, 20 years. Bottom line is, yes, pulling the demographics apart was helpful. The only one that was not significantly different was the male-female one. So that's fine. But the age definitely had a difference. And the years in Rotary definitely had a difference. The people who were in Rotary longer, if I remember correctly, fellowship was still really important to them. And service was like number 2. The people that were newer, service was number 1 by far. So that information, and it was anonymous, but we took that and we used it to make sure, because again, the club is, everyone's different. But we said we need to make sure that we are providing a great experience for each of those demographics that told us what they were interested in. And it's interesting, is Doreen still on? Yeah, she's on mute.
I'm still here.
Okay. Well, it's interesting because Doreen joined the club at a time when the club was not very interested in international projects. That was just what the data said. So there was like, here's all these different things in Rotary, check your top 3. And international was near the bottom. Here comes Doreen. Doreen is like a wealth of international knowledge, knows the foundation backwards and forwards, but the membership wasn't into that. And so it took a couple of years for the club to buy into something that they previously were not that interested in. Because it took someone like Doreen, who was so passionate and such a champion for it, that over time it wasn't, I don't know, Doreen, you don't need to add anything, but you certainly can. It took a while for the membership to see that value because it wasn't in their core at the time. Ultimately, I'm sorry?
That's fair to say. That's a good.
So for me, this was great because it adds strength to the club. It diversifies the club, but it wasn't immediate. Now the club is very focused on international projects. And I would hope that that will continue because we've gotten acclimated to that. So the notion of these surveys, and it doesn't have to be every year, but I would say every couple of years, because again, not only are people coming and going, but people are also evolving in their interests. To make sure that you have a sense of what they're interested in, what they're passionate about. And then as a leadership team at the club, do everything you can to engage them. And it's not going to be 100%, but if you don't have that feedback, you're going to ultimately be making assumptions. And the assumptions are not going to bear fruit as much as getting that engagement feedback. It's interesting too, because when I saw the results and international was near the bottom and Doreen comes in, I'm thinking, boy, this is really going to be interesting. And I will just say, I love Doreen. A Doreen type, someone who had all that knowledge, but didn't have the passion and the charisma and the boldness, it wouldn't have affected the club. That person would have assimilated into the club and that would have been fine. But someone that is bold and passionate and driven, membership kind of just came along. It was slow, but ultimately very successful. So big advocate of surveys. I just don't like the one that's in your manual. And as we talk about this, yeah, I'm hoping that you're getting a sense of why satisfaction is not sufficient, especially for a volunteer organization. People have so many choices now with what to do with their time. Why are they going to stay in Rotary? It has to be compelling. The rhinos, and we all know some, they pay their dues, show up and have a meal, although not right now, unless they're eating on Zoom, but it's, you know, that's some of the population, but we don't want to cater to them. We don't want that to be the norm. We need activity. Volunteers, more so than people that are paid. You know, it's interesting, if you do an engagement survey of your workforce at your business, and you say, why are you employed here? Some people are going to say, great pay, right? If I'm in a position to lead that company, I'm going to say, that's good to know. I'd like to also do things so that instead of it just being great pay, it's you love the people you work with, and you love the environment of the company, and you love what we do and all of that. But some people just do it for the money. Well, if you're volunteers, that goes away. And those 50% that left within 3 years, many of them probably joined other organizations. They didn't just say, well, I'm done with these service groups. Rotary was not a good fit. So it was even more incumbent upon us to engage people who have choice and volunteer for their time. I was fortunate and again, I wish I joined earlier, but once I joined, I didn't need a lot of people saying, hey, Jeff, you really ought to think about getting involved with this group or this group. I found my niches, but I don't think that's the norm. I think we need to, I think Karen, you mentioned it, they need to be mentored. Hold hands, walk them through this, help them understand. It takes a while. Rotary is so big. People are not going to get Rotary in the first couple months. So that mentorship and that kind of ongoing support is really important, and making sure that they understand all of those different opportunities that Rotary has. I don't know, some of you or some of your clubs may have, because I know a number of clubs do, where when a person joins, they must serve on a committee. Is that true? Yeah. I think that's great if it's a really good fit for the person as opposed to like a force fit. But it at least gets them involved, and they can maybe get a better idea of what this Rotary experience is like. Keep in mind there are other ways for Rotarians to get involved. Doreen talked about the action groups. That's a great way for people to get involved, but it's not through the club, right? It's just people joining. So there's many opportunities for people to get involved that are not, let's say, club specific. And let's make sure that when we're recruiting people and finding out what their passion is, that we don't forget about those other things in Rotary that may not be just within our club environment. So we've got a few minutes left before we close this session. Are there any questions, feedback? Anything about your personal experience?
Jeff, I'd like to make a comment.
Yeah.
It seems as though, in my experience, a big part of the enjoyment of Rotary is the friendships and the fellowship. And if you're going to encourage new members, any members, to participate in Rotary outside of the club, you would like to encourage them to find a way to bring that into the club, to share it with people so that they are still a part of everyone and experience belonging, contributing, and having a fellowship experience.
Absolutely, agree. Nancy, you've got your hand up.
Yes. One of the things that we talked about in the breakout session that we had, especially the new members, I think they mentioned 4 of us were less than 4 years, 1, 2, 3 years we had been on. And the comment that we had regarding our leadership was like those who helped or engaged us to participate more, somehow figured out a way to get us more involved. And actually all of us have now been more involved in our club than what we had been, because, you know, I think as a new member, you really do need that a little bit more, because, you know, I didn't talk a lot during the foundation portion because I still don't know a lot. So to me, I was just absorbing the information and I couldn't contribute because, okay, I did take a grant writing training, but I'm still trying to assimilate what I learned in there, and not enough for me to give that feedback on it. And so that is something that we talked about, especially for new members, is how important it is to have that participation, because if not, you just kind of get lost in the group. And not that you don't want to participate, and not that you don't have anything to participate, it's just you're not sure how. And that was one of the things that we mentioned in that breakout group about the leadership, especially when you're the new member.
That's great, totally agree. Doreen, go ahead.
Wanted to acknowledge that it takes time to affect change in a club, and people need to take that in consideration and not get discouraged. I didn't achieve everything I wanted to do in terms of international service, but I wore them down. And somebody followed me that has just as much passion, and I think a lot of people know who that is. And now the club is so into international service in Nepal and other places. And, you know, it will happen. You can't, I think people leave because they don't give it time. You've got to be like water. And water is more powerful than rock.
You know, just to piggyback on that, we talk some about the problems of getting in a comfort zone. It's hard to be engaged when you're in a comfort zone. It just is. What are you engaged about? It's hard to be engaged and comfortable at the same time, right? Donna, go ahead.
In our club, new members wear red badges, and they have a list of, out of a list of 6 things, 4 things that they have to do before they can become full members. But everyone knows because of the red badge, and so they engage them and help them along the way. And they are celebrated when they get that blue badge. And it just is a welcoming thing, and it kind of draws them in. And even virtually, where we've had many members this last year, we still had greeters online, and it was a good thing.
Readers online, that's cool. Any other comments before we close this session?
Well, Jeff, just building on what Donna just said, there's something about being able to mark accomplishment and experience growing in Rotary that I think is very appealing and that we may not have tapped fully. What about having a gold badge for people who've been in Rotary for a while and have not, go through a few different checklists, participate in a global grant, you know what I'm saying. We haven't even thought about that yet.
I'm generally in agreement. Oh, nice. I'm generally in agreement. The only thing that comes up sometimes where I will push back a little bit is engaged people generally don't need the recognition to continue to drive. It's a nice validation. They see it as the club recognizes my contributions, but it's not a driver for engagement. Does that make sense?
I know what you're saying. I don't disagree completely. I happen to believe that most human beings thrive on some measure of appreciation and acknowledgement and being known. I guess I would put it that way. There are a few that are self-generating and could take it or leave it, but I think in general, tailoring appreciation. Thank you, Laura. That's well put.
Yeah.
But I don't think ignoring it completely ever works.
Correct.
Just to say.
The key, and I'll just close on this. And again, we just scratched the surface. So for those who are going to be in membership roles in your clubs, there's a lot to think about here. It's very strategic. And you're going to try things that are going to work. You're going to try things that are not going to work. But this is why this is the #1 goal of Rotary clubs.
Yeah.
And why it's not easy. There's just a lot of considerations. Okay, Kathy, back to you.
All right. Thanks so much, everyone. Jeff, thanks. A great session. All kinds of wonderful things that we're learning. In our last session, then, yes, yay. Our last session, we have Pastor Governor Tom Lindsay. And Tom's one of the reasons that many of us said that we joined Rotary is for involvement in community projects, international projects. And so Tom's going to talk to us about creating service projects. So thank you so much, Tom.
Thank you. And thanks for everybody sticking around and going through this with us. I want to say first is the RLI, we do these in different units, but it's all one together. So take your thoughts, put them together. There are 3 different major sessions we go through, 18 units or so, and it makes one thought. If you come from that with 4 or 5 great ideas to try to implement in your own Rotary life and in your own club, that's going to be fantastic. Think about if you had one new thing a year in your club or one new accomplishment, how much it would grow. And so I encourage you to look at, we give you so much stuff, you can't do all of it at once. Jeff talked about engagement. Briefly, I had an experience when I was district governor. I had to give, obviously, speeches to all the different clubs, and I was traveling, but I had one club out of the 69 then that we did it in the evening, had a nice barbecue. They asked me to talk. And so I went up front and I couldn't see anybody. There were no lights. And had to talk to darkness. And when you do public speaking and talk, and Jeff can tell you, you need a little bit of feedback to know if you're getting to anyone or to adapt your speech. And it was the most difficult speech I give. And I'm not real sure if anyone was engaged because my engagement decreased as well. And so it's important for us as presenters for you to raise your hand once in a while, tell us hello or something. But engagement has a broad definition. And we're going to talk about projects. Well, what better way to establish engagement with your club members are service projects. Engagement goes 2 ways, yourself, your club, and the member. It's not a one-way street. You don't tell someone to get engaged and then you're not. So that person has to realize that you're engaged in the process as well. And these things are very important. In the grant part of the foundation part, we talk about grants to some extent, but Rotary International talks about when you do a grant is due diligence. And that's an overused word at times, but it's a very useful word. Thoroughly look at what you're going to do. Make plans, design it. In my professional life, when I did, even as a therapist, when I did more due diligence, I was a better therapist. When I didn't do as much, some days I went home and wondered why my clients weren't engaged with me. It's because I had not done enough due diligence. So it's very important. We look at service projects, sometimes we're going to talk about community side of it at this point, but there's service projects and fundraising where they can be separate or together. So can you tell me some of the things that you would first approach and think about if you're going to break a brand new service project? What are some of the ideas and thoughts that you have to start a new project? If you don't raise your hand, I'm going to call on you.
Kelly has her hand raised.
Okay.
I was just gonna say, what is the interest of the club? What kind of projects are the members interested in?
Good one.
Nancy?
Kelly stole my idea.
Stole your idea. Okay.
No, but I think also it's besides the interest of the club, is it a project that the club can do? I mean, because sometimes we think of something that could be really big, but yet maybe the membership just doesn't have the means for it, although you grab other Rotary clubs to help you, right? But those are the kinds of things you have to do, is how big of the project is and whether or not your club could do it, or do you have to ask for help from additional clubs?
Great. Deborah?
If it's going to be a district project, or, where you're getting financing from the district, then you want to make sure that you meet the criteria, that it falls into one of the 7 focuses, that it's going to be sustainable, and that you can justify a need to do this project.
On that level, yes. If you're going to go for some district funding, you have certain criteria to look at.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how about finding out what the community needs in your due diligence?
Rachel has her hand up, Tom.
Okay, Rachel.
I think sometimes too, it's about deciding whether or not it's time to end a traditional project. I think we're now in a time where we're just reevaluating everything in our businesses, in our home lives, in our, social activities, and some things it's time to let it go. The world has just changed too much, or the people or the membership or the need has just changed too much for it to be viable.
And there's no question projects have a life. Sometimes it goes through a cycle, and there are times to discontinue it, or at least redesign it or restart it or something like this, because there is a life to interest in projects, and you can all of a sudden start getting less participation. Laura?
I think it's also nice to have projects that give visibility. Still being fairly new at Rotary, in 2017, where I'd only been a Rotarian about a year, I started noticing that when I traveled, there were all these great Rotary projects that sometimes even Rotarians taking me to see them didn't realize they were Rotary projects, but you'd see the wheel there. And I think there's a lot to be said about ensuring that the projects we do not only are meaningful and useful to the community, but also people realize that this is Rotary doing this and giving this back to the community.
Okay, good. I think a lot of things were mentioned. Number one was, can we do the project? Is it a project the community needs? And is it something that your club can do with some help, even with other clubs or with other folks in the community, other organizations? That's your first step, is to find that definition, and you're comfortable with that, because your club can't address every need in the community, which we could. So you've got to figure out what you're comfortable with in your club and approach it to that way. Once you decide on a project, what do you do?
A committee?
Okay, Laura?
You start planning, because every project needs a plan.
Right. And what do you need in your planning, folks?
People.
You know what your resource requirements are.
Good.
You need to know what your timeline's going to be. You need to know all of the functions that you're trying to get done. I have to say that using the Boy Scout, Eagle Scout project planning thing is a great tool, or any of the ones from Project Management Institute. just to take people through how to go through a project and really get things planned and put together. And all of the caveats and risks that you have to plan for, all of the opportunities that you need to plan to take advantage of in case they happen.
Good. You know, Deborah knows this as well as anyone, that Rotary International does have a format where you design a global grant. Well, if you follow that format kind of on your local project, it's going to give you lots of guidance in your planning. It will help you think through a lot of questions that will occur. It's not a bad form to use locally as well, even though everything doesn't apply, obviously. But so those things are good. To have a plan, it's very important. To have a plan that you can do. How about people? How many people do you need? Do you need your whole club, 1/3 of it? 10 people or what?
That's all part of your planning resources.
That's right. And not everybody wants to be part of it. And how are you going to finance it? What would you do about finances?
Thank you, Leo.
Karen? Or I see you.
Pardon?
Kelly.
I was just gonna say, you also need to find what permissions you need in order to work on that project, perhaps.
Uh-huh. On financing, what are some unique things you can do?
Oh, well, obviously you can apply for district funds or other Rotary funds, approach your membership for funding, and even potentially partner with other nonprofits in town.
Okay, I mentioned fundraising project. How about tying a fundraising project to that specific project in the community to get more help through broad participation in the community?
Sure.
Have you ever done that?
We did that with the Needles of Hope project. We put out advertisement on all different kinds of Facebook groups, and we gave them a link to contribute to the project if they wanted to not actually help at it, but wanted to just give some funds.
Mm-hmm. Very good.
Santa Fe is currently launching an inaugural bicycle poker run where we will sell tickets to participate, and thereby we hope to raise maybe $10,000. We have also raised money from individual members of our club, but it's a sort of a hybrid, you know, looking internally, but also reaching out to the community for funding.
And on a fundraising project, if you do it with a specific goal, you put on the project, this is money to raise to build the playground at so-and-so park. If you do a standalone fundraiser for your club is to support Rotary projects such as, whether it be RILA or solid scholarships or whatever. So you have to be careful how you approach your project as well in general. And it's very important. How do you get people to do volunteers in your club to work in the project? What do you do?
You ask them.
You ask them?
Yeah.
How do you ask?
Sign up lists, speak about it during announcements. You just make sure, you know, you have somebody come in maybe to talk to them to get them excited about whatever it is you're doing.
I've done several workshops on getting volunteers, which Rotary is a volunteer, but in my other organizations that I worked with, I think the first and foremost thing is, if you go up to someone and say, would you serve on the golf committee, tournament committee? You're likely to get a no because they have no idea what they're gonna have to do. When you ask volunteers, and I'm an advocate of asking them personally, I would like you to work on this project and I need you to do these 2 things for me, rather than show up or whatever is involved. You'll have much better success. If you just pass a list around, some people do sign up that are already motivated. But again, with volunteers, you need very specific in what they have to do, how long they're going to do it, and all these things involved. And then you have a lot better situation. Have you ever volunteered to do something and they have nothing for you to do when you show up? You walk in and the in group is doing it.
Yeah.
Or whatever group it is.
Tom, I've found it's helpful to match the job to the skills and tell people why you picked them for that particular job.
Absolutely.
And then introduce them to what the possibility is for their own personal growth out of participating that way.
Very good.
At my school, we just created a one pager of all of these different volunteer opportunities, and we labeled it. I can't remember what we labeled it, but like each category had different, like some people have nothing but money. Some people have nothing but time. Some people have nothing but creativity. And so like we've got everything from like doing laundry for clothing donations for a clothing closet, to Amazon wish lists, to writing checks, to scooping ice cream back in the good old day, like whatever the thing was. Like there's so many different types of, from the shyest person to the wealthiest person, who knows? It's up to them to pick. When they say, I want to help the school, they know themselves best. And so they can pick from a list of like 45 different things to do, you know?
And that's great
So-
because it's very specific what they can do.
So
Also,
when you say, can you volunteer for the golf committee? Ooh, I don't know. I don't play golf. No,
That's right.
but I'm really good at social media. So I'll do that, you know, like to kind of have all of these different opportunities within a certain project.
years ago, my wife and I were horse show managers here for several years. We didn't ride a horse, never been on a horse, but the horse show folks came to us, very civic duty of designing it, organizing it, and not participating because you could not be a participant and be on the horse show committee. And so we did a community service that way, but we knew what we had to do, and that was important. Learned a lot about horses, but also you're right. Jeff mentioned rhinos, Rotary in name only. What a great opportunity for you if you have a project and you're in charge of it or need help, going to that rhino with one small task. Say, would you call this person for me and get this information, or just one thing that you know they can do. And I can tell you 9 times out of 10, they will. They'll do it. And they're engaged then. It's steps, one step at a time. And it'll
Tom?
work. Yes.
I just wanted to say, we for the Reunity Resources Project last year, we did not target specific individuals, but invited the recipient, the executive director, to come speak to the club. And through repeated announcements and solicitations during club meetings, we were able to get, and we had a specific task that was going to be shared by all volunteers, which was to, wield a shovel and plant some fruit trees. We got 25 volunteers to show up on an early October Saturday morning, and they came and sweated all of us together, and we fed them when all was said and done. And I think the value of repetition and, of course, making clear what the objectives of the engagement are really made a difference.
Very important to make you feel you know what you're going to do, and when you go there and you do it. Also in this process, we mentioned financing. You do need to design a budget if it costs money. And you need to sit down and talk it out thoroughly. What are some items on the budget you would think about?
Materials.
Excuse me?
Materials.
Material, true.
Supplies, water,
Uh-huh.
badges.
There's a lot of details that you have to pay for in any project up front. And some you can pay afterwards, but you get, publicity. It may not be free. You may have to pay for some publicity. All those items you can think of that would cost. Then maybe the club has a resource to do it, and you don't need to have a fundraiser. But if not, again, you may have to go to the club and say, we need some donations. Do we do a fundraiser or whatever? And also, how long is this project? Is it 1 year? Or is it 10 years? The Deming duck race started out as a 1-year project, and now it's 25 or 26 years old. So you have to look at sustainability. Is it a project you're going to do from year to year for sustainability? will this project last or is it temporary? So that there's all kinds of things to look at in your project because those involve your cost as well from year to year. What's the best way to find out what your community needs?
Ask.
Huh?
Ask.
Ask them.
Ask, right. Who would you ask? Who do you ask?
Deborah Simon.
What?
Deborah. Well, I know Deborah.
Well, leaders of other nonprofits.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's right.
Also, you can identify needs in your local newspaper.
Correct.
Yeah, or from schools or from, there's different sources. Yeah.
Chamber of Commerce.
You can identify needs at coffee clubs or tea clubs or whatever. When you go out for refreshment, you talk to folks and you hear about needs sometimes you will never hear about publicly. And so any way you can get it. Kathy?
I'm sorry to interrupt, Tom. So to me, that's one of the cool things about being a Rotarian then, because in your club, then you have your diverse vocations and folks involved in so many different things, and that somebody always has an idea. Mm-hmm. Usually somebody always has at least one idea of a project you can get involved with.
That's true.
And if the Rotarians don't, then the Rotarians have friends who do. Gary King came up with the idea of tablets for hospitals because his relative worked in a hospital. Realized people needed iPads in order to talk to their families.
Great. And teach them how to use them.
Yeah.
As well.
In our
that's been
club,
evident. Yeah, go ahead.
In our club this past year, we had sort of a theme of what kind of projects we wanted to do. And it was making sure that people had food. So it was protecting food sources and all. So we did quite a bit around, and Steve has mentioned reunity several times. And that again is part of a farm growing the vegetables, and which is a real sustainable type of thing that we're doing, but also delivering food baskets, working with different organizations of the city to help distribute food to those that need it.
Correct. You mentioned your own members. Again, engagement. You can, I believe in asking folks, and you go to these members and ask them individually, privately, call them and say, what do you think we need in this community or in our area? And you may have to make 60 phone calls or see 60 people. It won't hurt you either. And then again, that's engagement. So your membership feels they're part of what's happening in their club and in their community as well.
And it's great outreach during the pandemic too, where a lot of people are feeling isolated.
But that's true. That's very true. It's right now it's even more difficult to do. I guess we're achieving a little bit of relief, but still it's very challenging for our clubs. I know Sunny deserves all the thanks in the world, and every president of our clubs in the district and committee members and trainers for all they have done without actually the privilege and the fun of personal involvement together. So I think they should be given a lot of credit for what they do. It's difficult.
Thank you, Tom. It has its rewards, though. Zoom is, think about when we didn't have Zoom. We'd be doing conference calls all the time and it wouldn't be nearly as much fun.
Oh, yes, that's the truth. Probably wouldn't get very many people on them either. No. But this is a great way. What are some projects? I'd like to know what kind of projects you would think of locally, and it doesn't apply to everybody, but you can think of I always call it a mini project, because maybe your club's not doing projects. What's something you could do to kind of get in, as Doreen mentioned, getting into the international service, what are some small things you can do in your communities that you can kind of get your club going and do without a lot of expense? Do you have any ideas?
Gardens are a great thing, and we have our memorial garden, and then the surrounding area around the Rotary treehouse that we put up at our environmental education center. But the high school memorial garden didn't start out very expensive, and it's been so meaningful over the years. And this year, every time we've done work on it, we've been able to moderate the amount of folks who can come based on what the level of COVID resilience in the area is.
Good. Anybody else?
Working,
Brad?
Working
I'm
with
sorry.
the literacy program, we have put in a park and it's changed quarterly where families can walk and read a book as they walk along a path. And it's changed quarterly and it's become very, very well used. And then as the family finishes, they can submit it to our Rotary Club and win a prize.
Nice.
Brad?
Done a couple of those. One required very little funding, and that was converting some of those little book pantries that would pop up around the neighborhoods that take a book, borrow a book. We converted those into food pantries for people to drop off food when unemployment went high during the pandemic. And then another one was collecting plastic grocery bags, and we made beds for the homeless out of those plastic bags. So very little cost, but high engagement activity for our club and publicity as well.
Noreen?
I want to share something that a little tiny club in Canada did a year ago in the midst of the pandemic. They wanted to find a way to keep their Rotarians engaged and to provide some fellowship while everybody was isolated. So they started this Rotary online community bingo game. And initially it was just a few people playing, and it's $10 a card. And it caught on. And now it's in 16 clubs in southeastern British Columbia. And over the last year, they've donated in proceeds over $600,000 to local service projects. And it started with 20 people.
Pretty good. You can buy dimming for $600,000.
Everybody in the community plays on Friday nights, and now they're all joining Rotary.
That's great.
Wow.
Renee?
Hey.
Yes. I had a couple things I wanted to input. I know that we talked about sign-up sheets and getting people involved, and I'm sure many other clubs have the handful of people who are willing to do the work and another handful of people who are willing to do, donate. And so what I did a couple times, and it worked really well, and I think they're still doing it in Tier C, was on the sign-up list. I went ahead and put every member's name on the sign-up list, and you had two options: you donate or you work. And so it worked out really well to where anybody who either wasn't at the meeting or didn't sign up, and if they were at the meeting and didn't sign up, I knew it was just because they were checking their calendar. I would call them and say, you're the only one that didn't choose something, I don't care if it's $5 you donate, if you're strapped or anything like that, but it worked out really well. So it engaged everybody. And those who didn't put something down, it gave me the opportunity when I was president to contact them. So that was a good one. One of the small projects we did was the senior center. They had a problem with overflow during their lunchtime. And there's a back patio, but it was open to the public, and they found drug needles and stuff in the area. So the city owned the building. So we talked to the city. I worked for the city. They put up a chain link fence to secure it. All we bought were sails, shade sails, and a few chairs and some plants. And that was our service project. We went and just cleaned the place up, planted new plants and put up the sails, and they had an overflow for their lunch area, and it was great. And the first lunch, we went and had lunch with the seniors, so that was even better. But that was, and then we had probably about 12 or 13 that actually worked on that project, and we brought in some of the Interact kids and the junior Rotarians. So sorry, Tier C didn't have Interact yet, but we had junior Rotarians. So brought them in, and it was just a great project.
I want to talk about service projects and the aspect of people involved. I know our club has some projects they do that only 1 or 2 people are involved in it, such as Imagination Library. The club is aware of it, of course, and supports it, but 1 or 2 people head it, pretty much take care of all the book work and all the things that are involved in getting the books to the children. You can have RILA folks that are tremendously involved in RILA, and it may be one person in your club that's doing it, and we know that clubs have multiple people at times, but that person's RILA's their thing, and they talk to the club about it, and you're certainly enthusiastic, and your club supports it. So you don't discount those projects that require less people, scholarships or whatever's involved, but you do. When Jeff was talking about engagement, this is where you have to look at trying to do a projects, 1 or 2 or 3 a year, that involve multiple members. Number one, multiple members, a lot of members that the community can see out there working on the project. And you know what that translates to is membership in your club. I want to be a part of that. And Jeff, I don't think we have to have a membership drive if we have projects, period. If you have multiple projects in your club, you're involved, being seen, you're going to get new members. And you have someone involved in the global grants, the same thing. So I feel the key to a lot of things are, we join Rotary for service a lot, primarily, although there are other issues as Jeff's talked about. But if we have those service projects, we're going to get new members. In fact, we're going to have a whole bunch of new ones. It's going to be great. And so I encourage you to attack those and with some vigor and find those rhinos and get them to do something. One way to do it is a small, inexpensive way. I knew a club that would give $10 to a member, different member every meeting, and say, go out and spend this in the name of Rotary on somebody or something, and find someone that they could help. Very cheap, very easy to do. It may take $20 now. It was several years ago. But we can do things to engage our members. That way we won't need to be having the special membership, looking at this strata member or that strata member. We're going to have service membership because they see us doing those things. I wanted to be a Rotarian because I saw Rotarians working in our community. And when I got out of college, that's what I wanted to do, be part of that. So I thank you for your attention. I encourage you to go forth and continue your great work. Thank you.
Awesome. Hey.
Kathy?
Yes.
Since we have a few minutes and Tom raised a point, can I ask the group a question?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir, of course.
Well, it fits, and I see Bob has his hand raised too. It fits a number of things we talked about today. At a Rotary conference a number of years ago, a rhetorical question was asked, and it was very profound, and it's something I still think about today, which is, and the question was, I'm paraphrasing, it was, is Rotary a membership organization that does service? Or is Rotary a service organization comprised of members? It's just one of those questions. It's like, there's a lot of nuance to it, but I think given what Tom was saying, they are so interconnected that in a sense it's both. But it was just a very interesting way to kind of couch this whole issue about engaging members and doing service.
Hey, Jeff, do us a favor and put that question in the chat, okay? And I will copy it and send it out then with everything there. So, all right. Hey, hang on a second. So, Bob, you had something, please.
Yeah, and Tom, I think that's great that you're tying the service projects with membership recruitment capabilities there. Our Rotary International incoming president, Shaker Mehta's had two assets for his year: grow more and do more. And we've already talked about growing more, and now we're talking about doing more. And I think Renee talked about maybe having 2 or 3, maybe 1 or 2 large impactful projects during the year, several projects, but 1 or 2 impactful projects, increase the impact of those projects. And the way we do that is Shaker Mehta's asked us to have a Rotary Day of Service, where we join hands with other Rotary clubs, if we're able to geographically, and as minimum with maybe 1 or 2 other community service organizations, and then invite in community officials, mayors, civic leaders, and get them involved. Everybody wears some Rotary logo on brightly colored apparel, or maybe some signage out. So we increase our visibility on those projects. And when you bring in community leaders, civic leaders, it's going to be easier to get media involved as well. And then that will promote as well. And when we bring in more Rotary clubs together, they can bring in not only more people, but more district designated funds. So we can really have more impact on the projects that we do when we bring in more resources, as opposed to just one club. So each club should be doing those kinds of projects, having its own projects, but think about joining hands with other organizations, combining your resources and advertising that, and having big impactful projects in the coming year. Thanks.
Also, I recommend having 2 to 3 projects in your club. Not every member wants to play golf. Not everybody wants to do pancakes or whatever's involved, or plant trees or build a park, but have 2 or 3 projects so they do have some choice. You may have a project where you do have to ask your whole membership, so we need all of you. But in general, give some choices too, so you can reach out to the diversity of your club.
And Tom, can you hear me?
Yes.
Just a quick thing. I think that we skip over quickly the idea that 1 or 2 people can manage a project. If we can find bite-sized pieces that fit for the other members, it creates a synergy and an enthusiasm and a partnership that we don't want to sacrifice.
I agree. Unfortunately, what happens sometimes, a person starts a project and they do it.
Yes.
And this is where they need guidance and encouragement to expand it, or like you say, to give different tasks.
Sharing accountability is a learned leadership skill, I think.
That's true.
All right. So any other comments? Just again, the synergy of Rotary is just incredible. Whether it's collaborating with each other, with other organizations in our communities, and we do indeed make a difference, because we are people of action, right? We are. So I'm real quickly here. I'm going to make a slight change to myself. I'm going to give myself fangs and let's see. All right. And is it going to work? Is it going to work? Anyway, oh, yep, there we go. Woohoo. Okay. So I don't know if we have some other folks then that can also put on their graduation hat. We have Rochelle Ford, Tanya McKinney, who needed to leave and be involved with her other work, Carolyn Moore, Deborah Simon, and Andy Watley. So you guys are our graduates then. You've completed all 3 sessions. So let's give you guys a big hand. Hey, Jeff, I don't know. I've got the major certificate up here. I don't know if I can share that. Let me. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
All right. So
all I see is you starting.
Screen sharing. I think we're having some, yeah. Did you see it now?
There it
There
is.
There it is.
All right,
Here it is.
awesome. Yeah, I think, who knows what's happening. We're having a solar flare or something like that. And so they had to, anyway, so we do have, for your participation, we do have a Rotary mask and an RLI pin, which will be sent to you. It's forthcoming, and I'll send you your certificates then via email. So I'm going to stop sharing that. And for those of you who've joined us for the first time, or remember, we've got session 2 for the 22nd of May. And so that's going to be 3 short weeks, but we're glad for the opportunity to get these additional sessions in. Then Doreen, that's your, I can do it, right?
Rosie the Riveter hat, right?
All right, thank you.
I couldn't find a filter with a flower hat, and I'm not eligible for the hat.
Well, neither am I, but I just put it on anyway. Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah, so thank you. So Governor Cindy, you wanted to, what would you like to share with us then?
Well, I have a few closing remarks. Can everyone hear me all right? My internet is being crazy. Thank you. Like Doreen, I live in a 1-bar town, and the wind takes away the bar. Here's what I want you to know, and I think I may have said this to a couple of people before, and we will announce, Donna, before we leave when the next sessions are. First of all, and I know you know this, no matter how much we know in any situation, there's always more to learn. And that is so true about Rotary as well. I think Doreen's metaphor of Rotary and the onion is well taken. You know, we can always keep learning, and we always learn when we're around each other too. So being with Rotarians is an unfailingly rich experience. I also want to acknowledge, I think we sort of started talking about this at the beginning when Bruce was sharing about leadership, that leaders come in all shapes and sizes, and leaders don't have to look a particular way. And there's much to be accomplished as a leader from the stands or from any place on the playing field that you happen to be. So I hope there's no question in your mind that you are leaders, and that you're leaders because of the possibility you see for something greater than yourself and your club, and leaders because of the dedication you demonstrate by spending such a huge part of your May Day in Rotary Leadership Institute. It's a huge gift, and we don't take it lightly. So I hope you found today new wisdom, new ideas, and new friends by participating in the Rotary Leadership Institute. I want to thank all of our facilitators today, and especially perhaps District Trainer Jeff, our Zoom master and presenter extraordinaire. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Renee and Kathy, for all the work behind the scenes that makes this happen. You know, we sometimes don't even realize how much it takes to get us all together. And Kathy and Renee are relentless, and they also write the most engaging emails I've ever seen in my life. So thank you very
That's all
much.
Kathy gets that credit. I want to send a special thank you to
Lots
Kathy.
of credit to Kathy.
Yeah,
So-
definitely.
And then last but not least, hearty congratulations to all of the graduates today. Look forward to celebrating each of you that way very soon. And if you haven't already done so, I invite you to do 2 things. One is write down at least one action step you intend to take as a result of your participation in the Rotary Leadership Institute today. And then, just 1 second. And then also invite your fellow Rotarians to participate in RLI. Jeff, go ahead.
And if you are a graduate, please consider joining our faculty.
Yes,
We are
we would
all-
love to have you participate as a facilitator. If that is at all of interest to you, please be in touch with Jeff.
You won't believe what the pay is.
We'll triple it for you. And oh, I guess we should also mention that members of District 5520 who complete all 3 sessions in this Rotary year will be having their current Paul Harris Fellow Award completed by us.
Great.
It's very cool. Very cool. So awesome. Congratulations, you
And
guys.
we do that not to bribe you, but because it's a gift to our district that you do this.
Yeah,
And it
that
takes
is.
something that you do this. Thank you.
Madam Governor, I went ahead and added that question into the evaluation.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. And I will repost into the chat the link for those who might have not seen it come through. So it'll be fresh in front of you.
And Andy, the hat is most becoming.
Hides my gray hair.
Right.
So I'm good, Deborah and Rochelle and Carolyn and Andy. I'm gonna miss you guys, and so hopefully we'll see you as our W2 then.
We'll see one another again.
Yeah, we will. Yeah, we will. So God bless. Oh, there, Bruce, there you got it. Hey, that looks pretty good on
Bruce, yes.
Yeah. Well, you guys have a great day, great week. Go out and make it a Rotary week or a Rotary year, and God bless all y'all. Thank you.